Okay, so this is part 2 of the last video. It's funny. I can't help but say I know that's like the worst thing you could do when you're doing stuff like this, but I don't think about it. I literally just make these sort of on the fly. I don't really prepare them that like in advance, but I always say So I thought I'd look up the word Just want to point this out really quick. It's so stupid, but the word and it's just so fitting for what I've been. The word is 34. Just made all these videos about 34, and I say in like every video. It's so ridiculous. But, so yeah, just said it again. Can't even stop myself. But, I guess on that note, I want to mention one more thing. So I talked about how I feel like they're going to start doing some Aaron stuff in the news because that was Moses' brother, and they're running a Moses story, so they got to involve Aaron at some point. I don't know if it involves like Aaron Rodgers or like sports. Really don't know. I can't think of that many Aarons. But I just talked about the announcer that died because the guy who announced Hank Aaron's 715th home run. I just find that interesting because Aaron, the brother of Moses, was like the speaker or whatever for Moses. It even talks about Moses complained that he could not speak well, and God appointed Aaron as Moses' prophet. So, like, he's the one who went and spoke to Pharaoh and whatnot. So it's kind of interesting. He's kind of like the announcer, and then the announcer for Hank Aaron dies. Doesn't have to mean much, just throwing it out there, just an idea, I guess. But all of this stuff, the Jonathan Martin, the bullying scandal, it's totally a domestic violence because it was in the locker room or whatever, text messaging. They played for the same team, so it was like a domestic violence. But earlier in 2013, you had the Super Bowl, and it was the Harbaugh. It was where John Harbaugh and Jim Harbaugh both coached one of these teams that were in the Super Bowl, and they were brothers, so they called it the Harbaugh. And Harbaugh is 34 in gematria. Also forgot to mention that Moses' brother Aaron died in Mazarah. That's also 34. Anyway, there was a ton of, 34s in this game, so really interests me a lot because I've talked about the Blackout with Nebraska Cornhuskers, how I thought the nuclear power plant deals with a blackout versus an explosion or something. And this Super Bowl was also called the Blackout Bowl because the power went out and it was suspended for 34 minutes in the third quarter, and the score was even a total of 34, and the Ravens won with 34 points, and the game was even played on the 34th day of the year. And I made a whole other video on this, even like everybody, like all the halftime people, I think they all were like 34 years old or something, or gonna be 34. Yeah. 34 years old. Beyonce was in there. I think Beyonce's 34. There's a ton of 34. So, and if you were born in 1981, you would be 34 years old or turning 34 this year. Well, 1981, if you like flip it upside down, I can't do it here, but if you flip it upside down, it's 1861, just like the year that the Civil War began. So, interesting. So this game, like I said, was between the two brothers, so once again, the domestic violence theme. But the winner, the coach that was the winner was John Harbaugh. Let me try to find it here. John Harbaugh, he coached the winning team. And look when he was born, September 23rd, 1962. That means he's 52 right now. His 53rd birthday will be on September 23rd this year. And I've talked about his brother, how his brother coaches the Michigan Wolverines. It all ties back to Lupercalia and the sacrifice of the wolf. So, whatever, just putting that all out there. And John Harbaugh in gematria is 59, number coded around black people like crazy, Negro, slave, cotton picker, I mean, the list goes on, Obamacare. But also, 113. Well, I forgot to mention about 113. We've seen this number a lot with Queen Elizabeth, and because that's when the 252nd day with 113th left, 113 left is when she became the longest reigning British/English monarch ever. But 11-3 is also like November 3rd, where there's 58 days remaining until the end of the year. Anyway, the reason that I find it interesting is because the Super Bowl, like I said, was played on the 34th day of the year in 2013. And Richie Incognito is the reason that it ties into the bullying scandal, ties into the Nebraska Cornhuskers. And this was called the Blackout Bowl. It was all about the number 34, just like the Nebraska Cornhuskers games have been all about the number 34. And then also the big plays involve the 12s, which is for the 12 tribes of Israel because it involves a Moses theme and an Abe Lincoln theme. Before I even go into it, I want to point out something about Lincoln, Nebraska even. Look at the map of it here. I mean, what highway is that goes right through it or whatever, right next to it at least? Highway 34. What are the odds of that? I mean, no way. You know what I mean? That's just craziness. The university's right here, and Highway 34 goes this way. It turns into Highway 6. And of course, if you do 6 in gematria, it adds to 52. But I definitely need to do more research into the Civil War and the ties that it has to, like, Nebraska and Iowa and Lincoln and whatnot. I don't really know the history that well. So I need to do some research into that. But I want to get back to the story here. So it's the Blackout Bowl, and it was on, whatever, 3/3 of 2013. So let's do the dates here. 2/3, February 3rd, 2013. And this is the day that the bullying scandal began, 10/30/2013. It's a span of 269 days. Now, I just talked about that in Nebraska. They're playing Southern Mississippi, and it dealt with the Delta State University shooting and then Moses Malone dying. But the game is on the 269th day of the year, and also it's September 26th, which in other countries they write it as 26-9 even, like 269. And I talked about the Fort Calhoun nuclear plant and whatnot, and how I think it might cause a blackout. I mean, I don't know. That was just one of my theories. But considering this game is 269 days before that scandal, it involves Nebraska, I'm just trying to put this puzzle together. It doesn't have to mean anything. But interesting, this is the Blackout Bowl. So it makes me wonder if there's going to be a blackout at that game, or if Nebraska's going to just wear all black, or if there's going to be a blackout in the world or the country or what. Just interesting, just something to think about. The attendance of the Super Bowl is even 71,000 and then 24, but so rounded down to 71,000. I mean, that's all ties in with the Moses theme. Also interesting is that the Baltimore Ravens won 34 points, and Baltimore is where the Civil War began in 1861. In Baltimore, in gematria, is 41. And way down here, I talked about all these 41s. Jamal Charles, 41 even. The announcer who just died, the Mirrors of 41. There's a ton of 41. Let me bring them up here. Moses Malone. The stadium that Nebraska plays in, Memorial, 41. The coach, when they became the Black Shirts, Bob Devaney or whatever, Black Shirts, 41. Husker fans, 41s. Skull and Bones ties into the Black Shirts, 41. I mean, there's a lot of 41, so interesting. And down here is another reason why all these numbers are significant. So the 58, 52 adds up to 43, whatever. Delta State University is 269. September 23rd is 269. That's why I talked about the Nebraska game being significant and why this is significant, because it's 269 days away from that. So I was just messing around. This is the day that Richie Incognito, he didn't play since then, and this is when he signed with the Buffalo Bills, 2/7/2015. And then this is the day of the Nebraska game. It's 231 days, or also 33 weeks exactly. So pretty significant number. 33 is always involved in all of the shootings and everything else. So 33. Also, conveniently, the Dolphins play the Buffalo Bills on the next day, 9/27, the day of the blood moon. And the blood moon actually starts in Lincoln, Nebraska at 7:11 p.m. that day. Very interesting number that it would begin there on 7/11. Also interesting is the game starts at 3:25 Central Time, so it would be 4:25, and the game is in Miami. So the game would end literally right around the time that the blood moon begins. And if you go to the Miami blood moon, it says that it starts at 8:11 p.m. 8:11, kind of like the 88. Also, it ends at 1:22 a.m. Very, very interesting. That is a number we have talked about so many times, so really makes me wonder. I mean, I don't know what's going on, but these numbers, there's a lot of patterns. It's some pretty strange stuff. In Gematria, blood moon is 105, which would be, that's the day of the blood moon or whatever. Also, gay marriage, just throwing that in there because it seemed like it all ties back to that at some point. Lincoln, or 9/11 is 105 even. And then if you add up the word 105, it adds to 150, just like Lincoln, Nebraska. So I also talked about how there could be, it seems like they're foreshadowing a blackout. Blackout is 85. And the reason that I mentioned that was because of Superbowl, the Super Bowl or whatever. And Superbowl adds to 41. That's all them 41s I talked about. This year, the next Super Bowl will be Super Bowl 50, and Super Bowl 50 adds up to 71. So they're definitely going to be running this Moses theme for a while. So who knows? Maybe this next game is just about parting the sea, and then who knows? I don't know how they're going to run the story, but interesting to me that Super Bowl 50 is 71. But anyway, let's go back to Richie Incognito. I wanted to talk a little bit more about him. When he played in Nebraska, he played under Frank Solich, or Solich, however you say it. I mean, he was born on an interesting day with Queen Elizabeth, 9/8 or 8/9 of the year 44, also from Pennsylvania, and is the age of 71 right now. Says he grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. We talked about that like crazy, dealing with the Delta State shooting, and Moses. Even the guy who founded Cleveland is Moses Cleveland. But anyway, he actually won 58 games in his career at Nebraska before he got fired. And he did it in his first 6 seasons, and it was more than Bob Devaney and Tom Osborne, or faster or whatever. He got 58, so there's a 58. And he was fired by this guy, Steve Peterson. And I know it's spelled different. It just reminds me, though, of where Abraham Lincoln died. Abraham Lincoln died in the Peterson house. It's with a P instead of a D. But just interesting that Abe Lincoln would die in the Peterson house. This guy fires Frank Solich and Ricky Incognito played under Frank Solich. Look at his name in Gematria, though. It's 58. And in simple Gematria, it's 157. I mean, I just talked about these numbers. So the Delta State shooting was in Mississippi, 157. Tom Osborne. Yeah, I can't even type it in here. Tom Osborne, 157. Brooke Behringer. Him and Tom Osborne are on a statue outside of Memorial Stadium, 157. Funny, too, Incognito's anger management began at Nebraska, kind of, whatever. And he even got thrown out of the game at Penn State. And I talked about the Tommy Boy references and whatever. But Frank Solich was actually replaced. He was replaced by Bill Callahan. Reminds you of Tommy Boy. Callahan Auto Parts. Tommy Callahan. So I found that interesting. He's even 59, born in 56. Lincoln died at the age of 56 in the year 65. After him, you had Bo Pelini, who took over. Bo Pelini was born in 67. They fired him after he had 67 wins at Nebraska. He was fired at the age of 46. His name in Gematria adds up to 46. I'm talking about the Callahan and the 56 stuff. It even says Nebraska's defense fell to 56 nationally with him. But Pelini was replaced by Cotton, who was 58 years old. I'm running out of time here. Pelini was fired. He got a job at Youngstown State, 58-38. All to do with the Roanoke shooting. I forgot to mention the bullying scandal thing. it caused the Dolphins to allow the league-high 58 sacks. And I know I didn't talk about it, but Michael Sam was number 52 at Missouri.